Welcome to this video. We're going to be going through the Visual Studio Code extension for ShareDo, getting it installed, setting it up, connecting it up, and then going and doing something with it. Right, so let's go first of all. So for it to work, we need to have a little folder and a workspace for this to work in. So workspace as in a Visual Studio Code workspace, and obviously a folder where it goes into. All right, so on my Mac here, I'm just going to create a little folder here called ShareDo WS, ShareDo workspace, right? And I'm going to open that in Visual Studio Code. All right, so in Visual Studio Code, I'll just drag and drop that on there like on the Mac, and it opens up ShareDo's. Okay, so that's a little folder that we've got open. All right, now on a Windows machine, you might have to just come in here, file, new folder, and then save the workspace and stuff. So we have to save the workspace as well. So we've got the folder open. Now let's just go and say save as workspace and just hit save. And that really just creates the workspace inside of the folder. All right, so, but we have a workspace now. Okay, and the next thing we want to do is go and install the Visual Studio Code extension. So we go over here to extensions, we go to ShareDo, like that, and we just hit the install button. Right, so a couple of seconds later, and it's installed. There we go. All right. So how we know that it's installed is if we go back to our Explorer view, and what we'll see here is that we now have ShareDo servers. Okay, there we go. So we've got ShareDo servers, and you can see it says add a ShareDo server. Now on your environment, this might be down here, and your ShareDo servers are there, or it might be up there. It all depends on your, on your own environment. Okay, and where it opens up. So I kind of like my open editors, and I like my ShareDo server sitting over there. Okay. All right. Now, if I just click on Add ShareDo Server, it's going to prompt me at the top here for some details that we have to go fill in. But we need to set up these details first on your environment, right? So this is the things that will allow this Visual Studio Code environment to connect into your ShareDo environment. So let's go and do that. Okay, so here I am inside of my ShareDo environment. So I need the URL over here that we're going to need, obviously, and a couple other details, right? So let's go and familiarize ourselves with the information we're going to need to capture. Now, instead of going through and stepping through this wizard at the top here, and it's a bit awkward if you click off it and then come back to it, it sort of restarts from the beginning. So it's a little bit annoying. So what we can do is if you go to the command palette, right, and inside of here, if you type in ShareDo, you'll see there's loads of different ShareDo things that come up. The ones that we want are the generate connection settings and then connect to ShareDo server. If you don't see them like I'm seeing them over there, just type in ShareDo :G, and then you should see generate connection settings. So just go and run that, and it pastes this onto your panel over here, and you can see these are the sort of settings that we need, right? So we need the URL, client ID, client secret, impersonation user, and impersonation provider. All right. So let's go and get those details all sorted out. So we go over here. The first thing is pretty easy. We just need the URL. So I'm going to just copy that, come back to our environment here, and just put in that URL over there. Paste. Right, then we need something called the client ID. All right. So we're going to here, and we're going to go into admin, and we're going to create the mechanism that extension can connect into your environment. So we're going to integrations to manage identity server. And what we're going to do here is we're going to create a new little app. Now I've already got one over here that I use, but we're going to create a new one. All right. What you will also see is that you've got these different identity providers. So we're going to create an app, and then we're going to also specify what user connects into that app. And that's going to be dependent on these. And just so you're familiar, if you look at local forms, you'll see that local forms login is system name is ID SVR, right? If I look at Active Directory, it's AAD. Right, now in most cases you might just have those two, or maybe just the one. You could have many, right? So if I look at this other one is called Alterspective AD. So just note it's those little details that we need. All right, and that is so we can decide what user are we going to be connecting in as. Now if I go down over here to my users, actually let me duplicate this so get back to these here. I'm going to go down to my users. Okay, if I look, I want to connect in, we're going to impersonate this Igor user. And if I just, let's close it. If I double click on this, I can go to user account, and over there I can see we're going to connect in as Igor. That's the identity claim that we're going to connect in as. and Igor is connected using forms-based login. All right. So let's take Igor over here. And that's the user that we're going to be connecting as. And then it says impersonate provider, IDSR or AAD. So if you remember, let's confirm, go back here. Okay, so Igor is forms-based login, his identity provider. And that identity provider, all right, form-based login, its name is IDSR. So that's the one that we want. So if I go back, I can just get rid of this AAD one. We got that. Okay, so we've got those two, we got the URL. Now what we need is a client ID and the client secret. All right, so let's go and set those up. Right, so back inside of here, we're going to now go and create a new app. And sorry, a new app over there, not a new provider, be careful, a new app. And we're going to bottom one of here, add client credentials with dynamic impersonation. We're going to choose that one. Let's give it a name. So VSCode app, and you can call it what you want. So that's the name. That's the name that shows up over here. And then the client ID. Now I normally keep these the same, but the client ID is the thing that we need just now, right? So copy client ID. Then we need a client secret. So I'm going to just generate one. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to save this. I'm going to grab the client ID. Let's go back over here. So that's a client ID, VSCode app that we created. Client secret. So if we hit that little button, we can see it there. And we're going to grab that. And we're going to put the client secret in there. Okay. Now that's enough to provide the connection details. But when it connects, it needs to be able to have permission to do things, right? So what we're going to do is go down to the bottom here under the client permissions. So when we connect with this app as Igor, what can he do? Right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to provide admin access, and we're going to provide ShareDo modeler access ShareDo modeling toolings. All right, so we need to give him those permissions. So obviously don't do this on your production environment, do this in your vNext, an environment where, you're going to be using this tooling to help you do things, not, manipulate your production environment. Okay. Right. So those are the permissions we're giving that person. All right. So we save that off, and effectively over here, we've got this VSCode app. Right. So if you want to stop anyone from using that Visual Studio Code extension with this app, we just come and disable it and then they're out. All right. So let's go back now into this environment. Okay. Now, if you remember, I said it's a bit annoying filling in this stuff. All right, so what you can do is just highlight that and copy it. Make sure you get everything from the curly bracket at the top to the bottom. Hit Add ShareDo, Control and paste it in here. Now it looks a bit weird, but don't worry. If you hit Enter, now it asks you the client ID. You can see it's already filled in. The client secret's filled in, impersonate user, the server IDSR, and you'll see here it talks about the token endpoint. Now that's auto-generated based upon the URL. It just inserts identity into that. Normally, probably 99% of the case, just leave it as it is. And this is a very unique circumstance where you've got to make that something slightly different. So that's okay. We just hit Enter. And then what we'll see, and we close this now, we don't need that anymore. What we can see now is we have a ShareDo server connected up. And if I open that up, you should see that list of details. And if we browse through them, we should be able to see the information that mimics our environment. So if I look at my work types over here, we should see our different work types. If I go to a work type like instruction, and what we'll see is some basic details. So its name, icon, a bunch of details about it, and if it's abstract or not. All right, then we can see derived types. So instruction has some derived types, inquiry and instruction BTB. And if we drill down to instruction BTB, we can see the type inside there. And again, what derived types come off that. All right, so you sort of get the idea that, let's create permissions. And there's the derived types of that. So we can drill down through that hierarchy quite nicely from within inside of here. All right, so you should be able to see how that looks like your environment. And what's also kind of neat is that if you go to, let's say, instruction, if you just right click on it and you say open work type management, and you just click on that, it's gives you a little warning sign, which you can configure that to trust that. But if you just hit open, it opens up directly on that particular area. So we're looking at instruction, and it's opened up on instruction. All right. So what we've done in this video is that we've set up a Visual Studio Code workspace. We have installed the Visual Studio Code extension for ShareDo. We've gone into ShareDo and we've set up the app that is going to allow the Visual Studio Code extension to connect into ShareDo. We specified what user we're going to use. We got the app ID, the client, the secret, and all that information, and we created the connection. So what we now have is we have our connected server over here. All right, so we've got one in there, but we can in fact go and connect others. So we could have as many as we want. We could have quite a few environments that sit inside here that we can use, and we can use this to browse and manage and compare things. What you also have, if you go into any of these objects, you can actually right click and say object, and then what that does is that just brings up some raw data about that object. Now it might be useful if you want to compare two things together and just look at that raw data, and then you can use features that sit inside of Visual Studio Code, like being able to compare different editors. So there might be, you're not sure about some setting that's between two, you could probably get those two and then do a comparison and diff, and you can sort of, I can see that setting's slightly different there. So there's a few things that we can do inside of here to, to compare different environments across each other and things like that as well. All right. So I'm going to stop here on this video. So we've got it installed, connected up, we can connect multiple servers. In other videos, we'll go through details like how to, coordinate permissions across both role-based permissions and create permissions, as well as managing the IDE, being able to build things inside of Visual Studio Code, maybe even using TypeScript, and then deploying them onto the different environments. You will start to see that as you add different environments, you can actually go here and click on the add to deploy, so that you can go and right click deploy, and you could even deploy to multiple servers at the same time if you want to. If you've got some code, or maybe you're building a workflow action, or you're building a new type of aspect, or just some general code that goes on the environment, the way that you can manage it inside of here. You can go and check it into Git, you can manage it in your Git repository, check it in and out, and then deploy it onto your different ShareDo environments. So quite exciting. There's a lot of stuff we're going to be able to do with this tooling, and it really gives us the power of Visual Studio Code, which is an amazing environment. It's nice and lightweight. It's got huge amount of connectivity into various different technologies, like GitHub or DevOps and things like that, as well as thousands and thousands of other types of connectors that can improve our workflow around managing code and deploying that into ShareDo, and even being able to perhaps deploy a new workflow action, and then being able to go in on our IDE here and then go and have a look at what workflows are using that. So we can know, we're going to change some code in a workflow action, or let's just go quickly have a look and see, bring me a report, and we'll bring you a report and we'll show you what workflows you might be affecting by maybe changing some code. So we'll do different videos on those sort of things as well. So look out for those, but for now, connect it up and ready to go.